All right, we're going to get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jessica Megatarian. I'm with our Ocean Observing and Monitoring Division here at NOAA Research. Thank you for joining us for the first ever NOAA Research-led panel to celebrate International Women's Day and the Women of NOAA. This is the first of our two-part panel, and the women you'll hear from today have been nominated by their peers based on their notable achievements in science, leadership, mentorship, or promoting positive change. Our call for nominations a few weeks ago had such a great turnout that we were frankly overwhelmed. I want to thank everyone who nominated somebody or who helped make this event happen. All the women who are nominated will also be featured through a digital campaign on the NOAA Research website and on the social media pages. You can find us by following the hashtag #WomenOfNOAA. NOAA's Research Line office includes 7 programs and 7 labs and supports 16 nonprofit and academic cooperative institutes across the country that together research weather and air quality, climate, and ocean and coastal resources. Today we have women joining us from 3 of these labs and 2 programs. So I'd like to have everyone introduce themselves. Let's start with in the room. April, do you want to tell us your name and what you do at NOAA and how long you've been in your role?
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is April Croxton. I am an analyst in the Policy Planning and Evaluation Group. I'm actually on detail currently in the Office of Formulation and Congressional Affairs. I've been with OAR NOAA Research for about 2 years now. I'm a newbie to NOAA Research, and I've been in my current or on my current detail for about 6 months. So I'm pretty new in my current position, but with PPE, Policy Planning and Evaluation, I've been with that group for about 2 years now.
Hi, I'm Emily Smith. I'm in the Ocean Observing and Monitoring Division in NOAA Research. I'm a program manager, have been for 3 years. I do sea level activities. I work with gliders in the California Current and also the Argo program. And I've totally been with NOAA for 4 years now. I was a Canals Fellow in 2015 with the same office.
Great. And we'll go to the fields with Meghan.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Meghan Cronin. I'm a scientist here at NOAA Pacific Marine Environmental Lab in Seattle, Washington. I lead the Ocean Climate Stations program. And so my group maintains 2 heavily instrumented surface moorings in the North Pacific. One's off of Japan, the Kuroshio Extension Observatory, and the other's in the Gulf of Alaska, that's Station Papa. And all of them are have suites of sensors to monitor the air-sea exchanges of heat, moisture, momentum, wind stress, and carbon dioxide, and they have sensors to monitor ocean acidification and the upper ocean conditions. There are NOAA's contribution to the global network of ocean sites, time series reference stations. I'm also a lead PI on a new project to test and use sail drone in the tropical Pacific. Sail drone are super exciting. They're unmanned surface vehicles, and so we launch them from California, and then they sail down to the tropics where we have them do experiments and take measurements. All the measurements are telemetered back to shore where we work them up, and then they sail back to shores. So that's what I do. I've been doing this since 1995. I arrived here as a postdoc in 93 and then got hired on in 95 as a oceanographer, principal investigator.
See, LaToya, can you introduce yourself, please?
Absolutely. My name is LaToya Myles, and I serve as Deputy Director of the Atmospheric Turbulence and Diffusion Division of the Air Resources Laboratory and NOAA Research. And I'm also a lead research physical scientist studying atmospheric chemistry. Specifically, my work looks into air surface exchange of nitrogen, particularly ammonia, how it gets emitted from different sources, how it is transported in the atmosphere, and then potentially how it is deposited through both wet and dry processes back to soil and plants. I'm involved heavily in a lot of field experiments out of our division as part of my atmospheric chemistry work, but then also as Deputy Director, I am working closely with our scientists and engineers to advance our programs in boundary layer research, in climate, as well as in chemistry.
Thank you. And Sarah, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sarah Kapnick, and I am the Deputy Division Leader and Research Physical Scientist of the Seasonal to Decadal Variability and Predictability Group at the Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory. My research relates to understanding seasonal to decadal to multi-decadal prediction and variability of the hydroclimate, with specific emphasis on extreme storms, snowfall, and snowpack. I also have some smaller research projects that are understanding the economic and financial consequences of seasonal prediction to multi-decadal variability and predictability and change.
Great, thank you. So we have such a wide range of different types of scientists and women in different career levels, and it's really cool. Thank you all for being here today. So I want to get right into it. Anyone can take this. What challenges have you faced in your careers, and what has helped you overcome those challenges? Tough one. Anything small or big? I think sharing our experiences is what helps us grow too.
Well, I think in my career, I joke that this is my third career. You know, I had a very clear path laid out in the 8th grade. I was going to get my PhD in marine biology and go on and be, you know, a scientist of some sort. I didn't quite know what that meant in the 8th grade, but I knew that is what was going to happen. And that did happen with a, 10-year delay. So I did not go straight through undergrad to grad school and et cetera. I ended up teaching and doing other things. And when I decided I really missed the science and wanted to go back, it was a hard decision. I mean, I was almost 30 years old, and to go back with, 21-year-olds that are just starting out getting their PhD. So it's a little difficult, but I think I'm a well-rounded person for it. So.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess I will probably stand out a little bit because I have been lucky to be in an environment. I actually started with NOAA in NOAA Fisheries. I've been with NOAA for 16 years now, nearly 16 years. And I started out in NOAA Fisheries in a laboratory. And the laboratory was actually very diverse in terms of gender. And so I was lucky that I had other females that were role models, and I could learn from some of the challenges that they had experienced, because when they were, matriculating through the process, they did not have the same environment that I had. And so I was able to learn from them without having to go through some of the challenges that they faced. So I feel a little lucky and thankful, that I did not have to experience some of the things that have been described to me.
Right. So important. Would anyone from the field like to do an experience?
I'll tell. Sarah, did you want to go or?
Ready?
Okay. Well, I had a very common, I think, challenge of balancing family and work life. I I don't go to sea much now. I send people to sea. I thank them very much. But when I started out the Kuroshio Extension Observatory, the Kyo buoy, I did go on a cruise, and I was away from home for a month. And you know, my husband, we had a daughter who was in first grade, and my husband was working at the time, had a super long commute. And so he was putting her into daycare before school at 7 in the morning, and then picking her up at 6 o'clock, you know, just before the bell rings at 6 o'clock. And it was super hard, super hard. And after that, we kind of regrouped to what can we do about this, and you know, do I travel less? What do we do? And what we decided, my husband really took the lead on this, was he decided that he would become the homemaker, and that would then allow him to do music, which is really his passion, and be more part of our daughter's school life. He volunteered at the school. We would do the soccer commutes. And for us, that really worked. It's, you know, it's a solution that a lot of families don't think about, but for us, it really worked.
Great.
I was going to say I have the opposite experience in April, where I undergraduate was in theoretical mathematics. I worked on Wall Street, and then I went back to grad school, and then I'm at the Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory, where each step of the way there have not been a lot of women around me, and I think that can be very isolating for women in science. And the way that I've dealt with it is by making colleagues and friends and mentors, not just at the institution that I'm at right now, but across NOAA, across also academic institutions. Like, I see two women on this panel with me that I've had the pleasure of working with before, and I've learned so much from. So for me, I've gotten through that by always making connections and building a network of women in my field across the US and across the world that I can count on and talk to if I have issues or questions or need someone else to give me their opinion on things.
Cool. I too faced challenges of being in an environment where we didn't have many female scientists, and I've also faced challenges and questions about trying to find the best path forward for my career as well as my family life. I think a different aspect I'd like to say that's a challenge that most scientists in general will face at some point is determining when you're about mid-career, which I am, is if you want to continue on the path of staying in the science and being engaged in field work, or if you want to take a different path and start moving more towards scientific management or policy or some other aspects of the science enterprise. And that is a serious challenge to take. And it is probably a path that takes you into a direction where you're working on projects and engaged more in management and administration, which has zero to do with everything that you learned in graduate school. But it is a point of inflection, so to speak, where we really have to decide how we want to handle the rest of our career and where we see ourselves ending up.
Great. And just to add on to some of the things everyone touched on, so according to a 2016 study, women make up we make up half of the college-educated workforce, but just 29% of the science and engineering workforce. And a new study I read about, it was an 8-year-long study led by Erin Setch, a sociologist at the University of Michigan, that half of U.S. women with full-time jobs in science, technology, math, and engineering fields leave the sector or go part-time after having their first child. So that speaks a lot to this work-life balance that you touched on, which I think is so important because as women, we're faced with different challenges than men traditionally, and just due to our bodies, which sometimes is unfair. So I feel like it's so important to just at least talk about these things and bring them up and share what solutions we found. Like Meghan, I really appreciate you sharing what your solution was in your family household, because that's, you know, not something everyone has the opportunity or sometimes guts to do. Would anyone else like to speak a little bit about how they've overcome being just in a field dominated by men? It's sometimes so challenging. I know personally, my background, I got my bachelor's in economics and like all the classes were men. So, but keep working and do your best.
Yeah, I can just dive right in on that one. I think that first I want to say the vast majority of men that I have encountered both in the NOAA office and in our partners have been really supportive and open. And then the second thing I want to say is sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you are in an environment and people realize that based on your lived experiences, regardless of your gender or your race or your background or where you grew up, you bring a different perspective perhaps to the table. And that sometimes that may be a perspective that is different than what has traditionally been thought of. Maybe you bring new ideas. And I think that as a discipline, scientific disciplines, we just need to make sure that there is the space and the opportunity for anyone, female or male, to be able to bring their ideas to the table and bring their whole selves into their careers.
Yeah, I love that. So for the whole group, what is some advice that you have been given and have really taken to heart or has helped you be successful?
Okay, could I show the slide that, yeah. Okay, I'm not sure whether LaToya saw this, but it is quite the sag here. So well, I was cleaning out my mom's house a couple of years ago, and in the garage there was a box. I found this this yellowed piece of paper, and this was from when I was in second grade, October of second grade. This picture is when I was in first grade. It's so it says here, someday I will be a girl scientist. From October 2nd, 1970. I have no memory of this, and it just super surprised me because I don't, when I went to college, I started as a music major, and then for some crazy reason, I don't know why, I switched to physics. It surprised everyone. It surprised me. But I think, you know, seeing this, it was like, oh, okay, I was in first grade, I had a really great teacher who, you know, we would pick apart dead animals that we found in the alleyway, you know, and look at maggots and talk about fluoride in the water that was being put into the water, and it was just so cool. And so, you know, she kind of, I think, got me hooked on being a scientist, but I was going to be a girl scientist.
Right.
And this is so funny because I don't really think of myself as being a girl scientist. I'm a scientist. In fact, like what LaToya was saying, is that in fact we bring our whole selves to what we do, and I am a girl scientist, and that's a good thing because you know, I bring who I am, and who I am, including being a girl scientist, makes a difference in the decisions I make, the choices, the problems I pick, how I build a team, you know, how I explain myself, and it really does it brings more to the science that gets done. And I think if you don't have all this, you know, if you didn't have the girl scientists, then you're going to be missing out on the science field is going to be missing out on what they bring. Anyway, it's cute.
Definitely, that's so cool.
I think for me, I started much like everyone else on the panel. I knew since elementary school that, you know, I was going into the sciences, knew I was going to get a PhD. That was it. When I got my PhD, I said, okay, what's next? Like, what's after this? I'd worked so hard, you know, to get that. But, you know, I had a great high school counselor that said to think broadly, not to specialize yourself, you know, too much. Think broadly. And that has really helped my career. I wanted to be a marine biologist. I ended up going into environmental sciences. So my education is very broad. I was able to transfer that knowledge into coming over and transferring from fisheries into NOAA research. And I'm doing something totally different, but I still have that knowledge from my background that is applicable to what I'm doing now. So definitely think broad. Don't, you know, put yourself in a box. You can do much more than you could even imagine you can do. So that was a piece of advice that I still, you know, take to heart now.
Yeah, and I'd echo April's sentiments. I mean, my background is biology, specifically phytoplankton. We do nothing of phytoplankton currently in my office. You know, I've been thrown into the physics world, and I took physical oceanography, but can tell you we derived formulas through calculus. That's about all I can tell you from that class. I don't, you know, the concepts, the principles apparently didn't stick. I don't know, but so learning from my colleagues now and what they do and how they do it, but understanding those broader concepts, right, of the general principles of the ocean. So, yeah, no, it's definitely good to have that broad perspective.
I think for me, the best advice that I got was find a job where you can change it and make it your own. So when I first came to my laboratory, I was told, these are the things that you should do to succeed. These are the very specific types of science you should do, or projects, and I didn't want to do those things. And I had my own ideas of things I wanted to do, and I took that advice to heart of, okay, I'm going to make this my own. I'm going to do what I'm interested in, what creatively makes me excited. And so I've now gone on that path, and I feel very happy and very fulfilled in everything that I've been able to do and achieve, because it was all my own, it was self-driven, and it's what I wanted to do. And I think that is the great thing about within the research part of what we do, you have a lot of freedom to be able to figure out what it is that you really want to pursue and try and make success in that area.
Okay, so I have a question for people who may be listening or watching this later on. What if you don't know that you want to be a scientist or get a PhD? What advice would you give to maybe a student listening in, or somebody working in a position that maybe they want to try something new, they're a little scared? I know a lot of us aren't sure what we want to do when we're younger, so I don't know if that has been anyone's experience on our panel today, but I just wanted to speak to that too.
I didn't know what I wanted to do. And some days I'm still not quite sure what I'll do in the future. I think that my motto is to try everything. Early on in middle school and high school, I had internships and in college cooperative education experiences, and each one of them was in a different field. I mean, it was different scientific disciplines. One summer I studied acoustics. The next summer I was looking at biology and dissections, and sometimes those experiences helped me figure out that I wanted to have a career in that direction. And then other experiences helped me realize that I never ever want to do that again in my life. But they were all informative, whether they were positive or negative. I learned that I could use those to filter out some of the areas I wasn't interested in, and then maybe hone in on areas like chemistry and biology and the environment that really resonated with me, where I felt like I could see myself working long term in science and answering questions related to those different fields.
And I would even go as far as, maybe even if it's not a student, a new student, or a young professional, even if it's someone that's in a mid-career. I don't know if you can tell, but I switched careers after about 15 years. I was a research fishery biologist. I'm now totally changing direction, and I'm focusing on budget and congressional, relations affairs. And I took the leap. It was a scary decision, but I knew that I was not being fulfilled. I love science, but I wasn't feeling that fulfillment that I did when I was younger. And so I had to recognize that in myself. And once I was honest with myself, and I realized I needed to do something. So not being afraid, and being honest with yourself, having that self-awareness where you are able to, say something's not, maybe I could do something different. What am I going to do? I'm not quite sure, but let's try it. Let's be adventurous. And so I would definitely encourage, even if it's not a young professional, someone that's in their mid-career, to be adventurous and to not be afraid to take that step, that leap of faith.
I was given advice by my mentor recently that she does something that scares her every day. I told her I don't know if I can quite get to that level, but I'll try once a week. But what April's saying, do something that scares you. Do something that's uncomfortable, because that's how you grow. That's how you learn and make new choices.
Mm-hmm. And I actually feel like I'm a better scientist. I'm a more well-rounded scientist because now I understand both sides. I understand the scientific portion as well as the management, administrative side. So I feel like although I'm not actually physically doing science, I'm a better scientist because of the information I now have.
Yeah, and I think we need to dispel the belief that we all knew exactly what we were going to do from the very time we could talk. That there is this myth of the scientists who knew since first grade, but always knew and always stuck to that course. And I don't think it's true for a lot of people. Really, women tend to have more interests, broader interests, and we explore. And I think it's really important that we explore all of them. As April said, it makes us a more well-rounded scientist, that we see things from different angles. And I think that's a really important part of research in giving us creativity and making connections across different fields or different ideas that if we hadn't had those experiences, we wouldn't be able to make them.
That's really true. And so when I went from physics to then oceanography, I did that. It was a summer program, a summer job at a university of Rhode Island, Graduate School of Oceanography. And it was so much fun, and it was so clarifying to me that this is what I wanted to do. And in fact, I ended up going to graduate school at that same institution, and the person who I was working for during that summer job became my advisor, my PhD advisor. And so I think that these internships and summer jobs and, opportunities, research opportunities, or different opportunities to try it out and see what it's like are really helpful for finding your path. And so now I get a lot of satisfaction out of mentoring kids and young people. I mean, I guess some not so young people, but through these different programs. And so people should take a look at the NOAA Office of Education's programs. There's a whole list of internship programs through NOAA, like the Halling Scholar program, internship program. And then there's some minority institutions that have programs with NOAA for doing research. And there's actually a whole long list, and you should just go and kind of rummage through that website, because we can be part of changing people's lives at our stage of careers now. And anyway, it can make a big difference in people's lives.
Thank you for sharing that. Would everyone like to share your proudest moment or an achievement that you feel good about? Just something to share about your career that was exciting, something you're happy about.
So I guess I kind of spoke of it a little earlier, the fact that I changed careers. I joke and tell folks that I had a mid-career crisis. And so the fact that I had the courage to make that change, luckily I had two great line offices that were willing to work with me and allowed me to go on details for several years. And so I was able to learn a little bit from different offices and finally landed in a spot that I really, really enjoyed the work that, the group was doing. So for me, that was success, because I had self-awareness and I took the initiative to take control of my career. And that was something that I didn't learn in graduate school. We're not taught that. I was told you do your work and, that's how it works. But in actuality, in reality, we all know that that is not the case. And so you really have to take control of your career. And I am proud of myself because I took control of my career. So for me, that is success.
I put together last year, with the help of the Earth Science Women's Network, NOAA, UCAR, whole bunch of groups, a women's leadership workshop. I had been searching for professional development for me, which does not fit in a normal category. If you go out and look for leadership development in academia, there's lots of opportunities. If you look in the business world, there's lots of opportunities. But if you're in this weird science management niche, there's not. And I, was frustrated and finally came up and found some sources to work with. And I thought, well, I don't want to just do this for me. I'm sure there's other people out there that are struggling with this same problem. And so put on a workshop last fall for 50 women, and going to be able to do it again this year for twice that number. So that was just really exciting to see women who also needed the same thing I needed out there across the country. So it's really good.
Great.
One of my favorite moments was a postdoc of mine that I had trained when she won a major award for all of her research, that a lot of it had gotten a lot of press and had a lot of impact socially. I always say that I'm more excited when people who work for me do well than myself. I won't talk about my accomplishments, but I get so excited when they do well, because the mentorship part, as Meghan said, has been something that I found really exciting and rewarding of seeing the next generation come up and giving confidence to people that are just starting out in their careers. And so I think that's been, as I've become more senior, that has been something that has made me much more excited and more proud than in the past. I'm sorry I keep coughing. I'm pregnant and I keep getting kicked in the diaphragm as I'm talking. I'm very excited about this discussion. That's like 50 minutes.
So we have an extra person on board at the panel today.
Extra woman.
I think for me, one of my proudest moments was within the last year. Our lab here has had a presence even before there was a formal NOAA. We've had folks here doing different types of meteorology and atmospheric work since the 1940s. And we've always had a really great presence and really great working relationship throughout the decades. However, we had never had an opportunity for our children to interact. And we hosted our first Take Your Daughters and Sons to Work Day, and I chaired that effort. And I was absolutely so proud and excited to see all of my colleagues' children and my children have an opportunity, and grandchildren have an opportunity to come into the lab and see what it is that is taking up a good portion of their parents' time during the day, and see them interacting with the different instruments that we have here at the lab, and how excited they were to experience the wind tunnel that we have, and just all of that interaction of having that excitement and curiosity of really young people from preschool age all the way up to high school coming into the lab and learning more about NOAA science and how their guardians or parents contribute to that science was really personally fulfilling to me, because I like working, like Meghan mentioned, with mentoring kids and young people, and to have that kind of K through 12 group come in and experience that for our first time ever was the ultimate in excitement and also the ultimate in exhaustion.
Yeah. And for me, I guess the moment that comes to me about being so proud was when I was actually on that Keo cruise and just watching the buoy go into the water. It seemed like everyone on the ship was working together. They were all wearing hard hats and had taglines, and it just, I could just see, it was just so visual that everyone was working to make this be a success. And it was not just everyone on the ship, but it was also having the ship out there. And, I knew that people in DC and in Japan and here at PMEL in Seattle and the academic colleagues that had invited me on the ship were all had all made this possible, really, and had were believed in that it was going to be successful, and I could see that in fact it was going to be successful. And it was just a moment that I don't know, it was super exciting for me. And that was 14 years ago or so. And so it has continued. And it was because of all of those people working together and through all of those years. Anyway, it's fun to see people actually see everyone all working together. And that was a moment where I was there and I saw it hanging over the side.
Wow.
Yep.
Incredible. I'm so glad that we have women who are accomplished and have been recognized for their many accomplishments here. Sorry. I do want to be wary of time, so I want to leave everyone with one important question and then some time for questions from the audience. You've all talked about the importance of mentorship. For those of us who may be listening today and maybe on the shy side, like some women are, or struggle to speak up, how would you suggest people find a mentor? What is your advice?
Well, I don't think it's one person. I think you should have a network of people, and that includes your counterparts that are on the same level as you are. They can be good sounding boards to just bounce ideas off of. To have a more formalized mentor, I recently went through this process, and it was literally just someone I respected. I watched her career, and I was like, I want that career, right? Like the steps she's done to advance her career. And since I knew her personally, we went out and had tea together, and I just asked her, and she was thrilled to do it. And she said, you know, we are talking about the shy side. We are completely opposite on the personality spectrum. I'm not a shy person at all, where she is. And she told me that she looked forward to learning from me as much as I did from her, because I do speak up with my ideas, and she doesn't always do that. So, you know, it can be formal, but I think 90% of mentorship is informal. You just find somebody that you talk to.
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely the peer mentoring can be helpful. You know, identifying someone that has the characteristics that you hope to attain or you want to obtain to reach a certain goal. If you know someone that knows that person, maybe talk to that common person and kind of ask them, will they introduce you? And that's kind of a soft way to, if you're, you know, a little nervous and apprehensive of cold calling someone or sending an email and that person not really knowing who you are. And so maybe if you have a mutual person that could set up that introduction, I think that's very important. And then we can't forget the two mentoring programs that we have, the OAR mentoring program as well as the NOAA-wide mentoring program. So definitely take advantage of those. There are other mentoring programs as well. Just recently, there was an announcement for the FAPAC, federal, I'm not going to mess but there was a call for mentors and mentees and mentors actually. So there are various, you know, programs that you can become a part of that will help you as well.
Yeah. I just want to say once again, NOAA Office of Education Programs website has the list of internships, and so people should check that out. But I want to agree that mentors are everywhere.
I think the one last thing to add is to put yourself out there. So if you're at a conference or other gathering of many people in science, just talk to people. And I know that's hard when you're really shy, because I also have shyness that I have to overcome. But just meeting and talking to people from different fields, you never know who might actually also become a mentor. You may have your targeted mentors, people that you want to mentor you, but you can also have these amazing mentorships that come out of just organically of meeting people and chatting with people. Some of my best mentors and strongest champions are people that I've met at conferences and chatted with, and we get together year after year now as a result of it to discuss things.
Yeah, I completely agree with Sarah that sometimes it's easier to have a conversation or connect with people when you're not in your typical work environment. And so meetings and conferences and workshops, particularly like the one that Emily mentioned, provide an opportunity for us to maybe have a conversation over lunch or during a break where it's a little easier to approach someone versus cold calling or showing up at somebody's cube or office doorway for a conversation. So maybe thinking about conferences as well as field experiments. If you're on ship or on a plane, it's a different environment and sometimes an easier one in which to approach people to have this type of conversation about mentoring or sponsorship or championing.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Let's take it to the audience in the room. Does anyone have questions? Yeah.
This is Jessica Snowden. I introduced myself for those on the remote part of the panel. I'm the acting deputy director for the Ocean Observing and Monitoring Division, and I just appreciate everybody's time and candor in what has been said today. I've enjoyed every second of it. I do have a question, and my question is really sparked by something, Sarah, that you said, and though April, I bet there's some resonance maybe with others as well. But Sarah, you talked about making a job your own and coming in and using the opportunities that NOAA Research has to be creative and shape things. And my question is, how did you do that? I think that sounds remarkable, and I'm so impressed that you were able to. I think that's probably not always the case, but were there certain things that you did? In April, you were on multiple details. You said, how did you convince your leadership or whoever to let you be creative and make things your own?
Yeah, so I came in to NOAA first as a postdoc and then as a federal hire, and people weren't doing the type of science that I was doing, and that was also part of the reason they brought me. But also there was first, we think you should do these sets or types of science or types of research, and I fulfilled that, but I also made it clear I need to spend some time doing this other creative stuff. I think it's higher risk, but it might have high reward if this type of stuff turns out. It's different, but I will satisfy what I need to do, but I'm also going to start expanding on this other stuff. And that other stuff has been my work on seasonal prediction of snowpack and on talking with water managers and doing some economic analysis related to my research that relates to my work before I got my PhD in finance. And at first, those were seen as fringe things that I was doing, that people let me do it so I would be happy and I would stay. But you know, a few of those pet small projects that I worked on ended up being tremendously successful. And now, as I've built my reputation and been able to do this longer and longer, I've gotten the respect to get more freedom in that creativity. So instead of it being something that I work on Friday, at first it was Friday afternoons. Friday afternoons I'll work on my thing, and then it became Fridays. Then it became Thursday and Friday, and then it became Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So I actually I'm very compartmentalized, and so I carved out the time to be able to start doing it, and over time I got to do it more and more. And I've had tremendous support from all across NOAA for doing that and trying to do that.
And for me, I was in a field location, and we all know that there are differences between field and headquarters. And so I was really happy and trying to bridge the gap between headquarters and our lab. And so I wanted to, find out how could I merge the two? What were some of the activities that I could do to merge the two? And so I was able to do an NRAP in NOAA Research, and then that led to another detail in PPE, developed some policy skills, still, maintaining my background. Aquaculture is my background, so still maintaining those connections, building partnerships between the two groups, and then realizing we need some budget skills here. We need some, some other skills here, and just piling those on, and kind of like Sarah said, just it's expanding and expanding. But definitely, having managers, supervisors that saw the vision and were supportive of the vision. So that was very important too.
Yeah, I have a question.
So my name is Anna Fossil. I'm a current Knaus Fellow here at OAR. A few months ago, I found out that my home institution, Ohio State, up until about 10 years ago, maternity leave actually counted against you on your tenure track. And I was shocked to believe that was such a recent change that they finally support women. So in your careers, have you guys come across any kind of institutional things like that? And how did you guys go about overcoming issues or situations like that in the workplace?
Great question.
Those that know me, I do not have children, but while I was getting my PhD, my graduate advisor she had a 2-year-old when I started, and then she ended up with another one throughout the process. And I got to see through her, so it didn't count against her tenure clock, but it did, wink, wink. So she chose to not stop her tenure clock for either of her children and continued the process and is now tenured, but also had male colleagues make comments of, aren't you always pregnant? And her kids were like 2 years apart, and, So watching her go through that experience firmly cast an iron that I did not want to go into academia, that I did want to work for the government. But she just persevered, and I don't know how, but she persevered and has made it as a tenure professor now. But yeah, there are still, that was not 10 years ago. So
yeah.
Here at the NOAA lab in Seattle, we have a really great daycare center, and the government, there's government priorities, Fed priorities, and then, NOAA, Fed, community, contractors, community, I think is the order. But it is excellent. And to be able to have an on-site daycare for me, as a woman, a mother, scientist, really helped. When she was in the infant room, I was going over there at lunchtime every day. And, we made friends. We made friends with other federal scientists. And so now I have lots of friends that are at fisheries that I probably wouldn't have met if we hadn't gone through the daycare with them. And so it really, I think that it helped my work to meet these people and to have a different slice of life with them. But it sure did bring stability to our family life and the family work balance to have the on-site daycare.
Yeah, it was difficult for me to hear the question, but I think it relates to motherhood and career path. For me, this really came back and resonated this week. My son turned 11, and in that celebration, and he's our oldest, in that celebration, I had a NOAA colleague who contacted me to wish him a happy birthday and reminded me that right after he was born, I was in Silver Spring for a leadership training session, and my husband and my brand new baby came with me to that. And that's always something that she's remembered, and something that I guess with my brain I had forgotten over time. But I felt like my children have been on the journey with me for my career, as well as my husband, and they've been incorporated into the work that I do. But it is a choice that I have made to handle my career in that way. And having things like close by childcare, having a flexible schedule where I can attend PTA meetings or leave early if they have sports activities has made my life so much easier.
And we've talked a lot about children. But we also have to take in consideration aging parents. So I don't have children, but my parents are getting older. I have a 94-year-old grandmother. So the flexibility, like LaToya was just speaking of, it's great. I'm so thankful that I have that here at NOAA. I actually live in Richmond. I live about 3.5 hours away. And so I'm able to telework, but I'm able to spend that time with my parents. And, with my transition to OAR, I left one location and I'm now closer to home. So I'm closer to family. So that means a lot more. And just, having that flexibility that, OAR has been able to afford, and the government, as a whole has been able to afford, has been really, really good. So thankfully, I don't think we will have those issues.
Yeah, and I want to say, in contrast to LaToya, with the birth of my first child, I hard birth, and so I needed extra time, and so people are very supportive of my taking extra time. I did get some snickering of, well, are you going part-time? Are you going to quit? I was like, no, I just need the time to recover, and then I'll come back full force. And it was very, the few women at my lab were very supportive of saying, figure out what it is exactly that you need to make this all work. And then you'll be more productive actually when you come back from your maternity leave in those years, because you'll be more, it does change the dynamic of how you work, but it's for the better. And the flexible hours that we have and the ability to telework with our jobs is really tremendous for women in the workforce. In other, like I worked in finance, and in other occupations, it's not as much of an option. And that optionality that we have is really, really useful to being able to effectively use your time the most that you want, both in work and in your personal life.
Great. Well, we have just a couple minutes left. Are there any other questions in the room? Last questions? I'd like to really thank everyone for joining us today here and on the call, on the line. We are putting up contact information for everyone you heard from today. Feel free to reach out if you have more questions about what we talked about today, if you'd like to stay in touch. I want to send my huge, huge thank you, especially for joining us with not a lot of time to prepare, as this was a huge team effort, and we're so happy we could have you here today to hear from you. So thank you, April Croxton, Emily Smith, Sarah Kapnick, LaToya Myles, and Meghan Cronin. And happy International Women's Day, everyone. Tomorrow is International Women's Day officially. I want to remind you to join us for the digital campaign by following #WomenOfNOAA. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.